Okay, Hamotzi, we're continuing in the Tzurba. We're in volume 13, and we're continuing in Hilchot Birkat Hamotzi. Okay. Last week we ended off about when to cut the bread, how to cut the bread, not to throw the bread. We talked about not passing it from hand to hand, right? In the Rambam and the Sharish for that one. So today we saw this Gemara already when we were learning Hilchot of Hamotzi, but now the Gemara is going to go more into it. What this is the halachot of hefsek, of an interruption. So the person said, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? But instead of eating the bread right away, he started to talk. So we're going to see, this is called a hefsek. We're going to see that even one word is considered a hefsek. And he's going to have to repeat the whole bracha, unless what he spoke about is related to the meal. So let's start with the Rambam, source 45 on page 244, in the middle of Hilchot Birkat Hamotzi. So the Rambam, Kol brachot kulan lo yafsik ben bracha or ben hadavar shemevarachin alav b'dvarim acherim. Anytime you make any bracha, not just Hamotzi, any bracha, and you make the bracha, you shouldn't be mafsik, you shouldn't interrupt with anything else in between, with nothing. You shouldn't be talking between anything. Ve'em hefsik, and if he did make the mafsik, he didn't make a hefsek, he made an interruption. He has to make a second bracha. But if what he spoke about was related to what he's doing, related to the bracha, then he does not have to make a second bracha. Ketzad, how is this? Like someone to make the bracha motzi lechem min haaretz. And before he ate, so he said, and then he says, bring the salt. That's fine. Doesn't have to make another bracha.
Inyan means connected, right?
Yes, connected. Inyan means the topic. Inyan means topic. The topic is related to the topic. Shehem inyan is part of the topic of what the bracha is about. That's a translation. Heviu melech, heviu tavshil, or he says, go bring me the oshplo, right? So he's made hamotzi lechem min haaretz. He didn't eat the bread yet, but he says, go bring oshplo. That's okay. That's not considered a hefsek because that's part of the meal. That's what the Rambam means. Me'inyan advarim. You would think it just means bring the salt or bring me the baba ganush. He's saying even further, heviu tavshil, or he says, tenu leploni lecho. He says, give that guy to eat. Tenu ma'achal behema. Or give the animal to eat. And similar to these, stuff that are related to the meal. He doesn't have to make another bracha. And anything that's similar to this. So it seems from the Rambam that lichatchila, right? He says at the beginning, you shouldn't speak anything. In the first instance, you shouldn't be talking anything in between. But b'di'avad, if you spoke about the topic of eating, about that meal, then it's okay. He doesn't have to repeat the bracha. Let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, source 46. Yachal miyad. V'lo yistiach ben bracha la'achila. The Shulchan Aruch says you should eat right away, and you shouldn't speak in between. Ve'em sach, and if you spoke, tzarich lechazor ve'levarech. He has to go and make another bracha. So the example of this would be, you may have hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Before you ate, you said, did you see the stocks? Did you hear who won the sports game? Oh, you know what my teacher did? You know what happened in the shul? All that is a hefsek. You're going to have to make another bracha hamotzi. Unless it's about what we're about to make a bracha on. We make hamotzi, making a bracha on the whole meal. He says, he makes bracha on Hamotzi, and then he says, bring me the salt, bring me the baba ganush, Give this guy to eat. Give the animals to eat. He does not have to make another bracha. The Ramah says, in the first instance, don't speak at all, anything, even stuff that connected to the meal. But if you did, that is okay. So if we take a look on page 242 in the Yaakov Yosef English edition of Berachot 1, here he says, what does he say? If someone spoke after reciting the blessing and before tasting the bread, he must repeat the blessing. This is the case even if you spoke one word unrelated to this meal. So that means you said Hamotzi and then you said just the word saw. Is just the word already hi? Did you already? That's one word. That's it. That is already problem.
Quick question.
That's something that's related to the meal. Avram, you want to say something?
Yeah, quick question. Let's say someone did not speak a word, but after washing, he goes and opens the refrigerator, gets something out of the refrigerator, and does other things without speaking. Is that a hefsek as well?
So you shouldn't wait a long time. But it's not considered a hefsek unless you forgot that you were going to make a meal. Meaning, so your example is, let's say he made a motzi lechem min haaretz, then he pulls out his phone to check the sports, right? To check the stocks, to check his emails. That would be an example of your question.
That, or let's say on Shabbat I wash and then I open the refrigerator to get, let's say, a soda or.
So that's definitely not a problem because your interruption is for the meal, right? So that's not a problem, and you didn't speak, right?
Oh.
Even if you spoke and said someone go get the soda from the refrigerator, that's not a problem. Going up and getting it also is not a hefsek in that sense. The question I think is greater is if a person says Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, then he pulls out his phone and starts checking the sports, checking the stocks, and he's not eating the bread because now he's really not related. But since he didn't speak, it seems to be he's just waiting time. As long as he didn't forget that he's about to eat a meal, it wouldn't be considered a hefsek. The problem would be then if he totally forgot he's about to eat, like, he made lots of an arts, and then he went to start building his shed. I don't know. He started building something in the woodworking room. Like totally forgot. Then that's a problem. Then he's gonna have to repeat again. But here the chiddush of the Yalkut Yosef is even if he said one word that's unrelated to the meal. But if he says here, example, if he said bring the salt, bring the baba ganoush, he says give someone else to eat. Or he says, for example, if he asks for the table to be set for the meal or for the main cooked course to be brought to the table, it's not considered a hefsek. So if he says, bring the manti, bring the plov, bring the baksh, bring the fish, that's not considered a hefsek. Hefsek if it's unrelated to the meal. Okay, that's the Hidush here. That's the idea of the Rambam. That's Shulchan Aruch. That is the Yalkut Yosef. So we have our first halakha for the day. Moving on. What about he makes the bracha and then let's take a look at the rokeh. If the one breaking the bread, so I make hamotzi, I'm Shabbat, right? Shabbat table. I'm sitting around, you're all there. I make hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I eat a little bit, and then they start talking. They didn't eat yet. The people, my guests, my family didn't eat yet. And they started talking. What happens then? He says they fulfill their obligation. I said the Hamotzi. I ate a little bit. And they spoke. And I'm passing the bread around. They're already talking. Okay? That's the case. I make Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I ate the bread. You started talking. You didn't get the bread. You have to make the bracha over again or not? So according to the Rokeach, says no, because once I fulfill the mitzvah, it says everyone already fulfilled the mitzvah, and therefore they don't have to make another bracha. That's what he says.
How so? Satiating is an individual mitzvah. Satiating. I understand he said bracha, it covers all, but satiation is a different situation.
They're saying they didn't eat it, right? They didn't eat it.
Yeah.
So how can they, the bracha?
Correct. How can they be fulfilled with that mitzvah?
So he seems to be saying, since I ate it, I made the bracha and I ate it, even though you're being yotzeh through my bracha, and you didn't eat it yet, but since I ate it, somehow the bracha is okay for you too. Let's take a look. Let's say if everyone agrees to this. Let's take a look at the Ramah. The Ramah says, this that he has to go back and make another bracha is only if he spoke before the one breaking the bread ate. But afterwards, if the guy who is the head of the household, he makes a bracha hamotzi and he himself eats, then another guy speaks is not considered a hefsek. Even though you guys didn't eat yet, they're yotze through my eating. I'm the head of the household. When I eat the bread, you're yotze your mitzvah of hamotzi. That's what the Ramah says. He ain't tzrichen kulam lachol min prusat hamotzeya. Rak she'osin kain l'chavuv mitzvah. It says because you don't have to eat the bread, you're just showing your desire to eat from my bread. So therefore, desire for the mitzvah, and therefore my eating is enough. Now that's the Ramah. Ramah says that I made a bracha, I ate, you talk, you can still eat bread after you talk because it's the yotze through my mitzvah. I ate, you're all yotze. That's what the Ramah says. That's the rokeach. That's the Ramah.
This is for any meal? Or
meal,
the obligated meals on Shabbat, because
even
now
Shabbat, yes, even Shabbat. So the Ramah, the rokeach, they say that everyone's sitting at the table. I made hamotzi. I ate my bread. And then everyone else on the table started to talk. Before eating, they don't have to make another hamotzi. They can just eat the bread. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. And he says, "V'hineh zehu rak dat harama." This is only the Ramah. But almost all the achronim argue with him. V'sviru, and they hold that the listeners are no better than the one reciting the bracha. If the guy making the bracha, he would talk beforehand, before he ate. He would have to go make another bracha, right? If he talked. If he talked unrelated matters, talk about the sports, he would have to make another bracha, right? So if these other people are talking unrelated matters, they should also go back, because all their yotzeh is the bracha. I said, everyone gets yotzeh through that, but not the food part. That's what Abraham was saying. He's saying what the Mishnah Berurah is saying. They got the bracha because they said amen, so it's as if they said the bracha, but they didn't taste it yet. So if they didn't taste it and they started talking, they have to say the bracha again. If he speaks a lot before he eats, then in the end, he brings another case that we'll deal with in a minute. He says, what happened? The guy makes a moti lechem in haaretz. He himself talks, but they're all quiet. He starts talking about the sports before he eats, and they're all quiet, waiting for the bread. But he spoke, so he has to go back and make another bracha. Do they need a second bracha? So we have to see. He doesn't clear it here. But the first thing is that the Mishnah Berurah argues with the Ramah and the Rokeach in the first case, which is I ate, and everyone else spoke. So Rokeach and Ramah said, they don't need another bracha, because you ate, you said the bracha, you ate, you're good, everyone's good. Mishnah Berurah says, not true. How do we paskin? How do we, those who follow the Yalkut Yosef, what do we do? So if you turn to page 246 in the English Yalkut Yosef, Halacha 25. Some poskim rule that if the person said hamotzi, tasted the bread, and others at the table have not yet tasted it, speak to one another, it is a hefsek, and they have to repeat the blessing. That's what the Mishnah Berurah said. Others ruled that is not a hefsek, since the bracha was already done and eaten by the guy. Here he says, and this is Chacham Ovadiah's famous klal when it comes to brachot, safek brachot lahakel. since we have a principle when it comes to a questionable bracha or not, we do not say it or make or the kula. Therefore, do not make the bracha in this case. He says the best thing to do is to think the words of the bracha, but you don't make the bracha. So we paskin, according to Hamotzi, like the Ramah and like the Rokeach. So this is the case, Rabotai. This is important halacha. It happens sometimes. You're sitting there, you're making the bracha, and you have the rest of the family, and all the ladies are there. They heard you say the bracha Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You ate the bread, and they started talking, and now you're giving out the bread. Do they have to make another bracha? The halacha is no. Since there is a mahloket, we have to make a bracha or not. Hamotzi says, "Safek brachot lahakel." Therefore, we do not say it. So, in the end of the day, we're like the Ramah and the Rokeach on this opinion, and not like the Mishnah Berurah and the other Achronim who say two seconds.
And they don't, even if they spoke, they don't have to just wash hands again without bracha?
Nothing. We already said Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I ate. They're yotzeh. You just give them the bread. Whenever they get to it, they get to it. They should eat it right away. But they talked in between something that's not related to the meal. It's okay. They don't have to make another bracha. What about the other case around? The case was, I made a Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Everyone on the table was quiet. I'm not eating, and I started to talk. What happens in this case? So this is the other way about. Okay. So we're going to take a look at the Alka Joseph, page 247, halacha 26. Some poskim rule that if the person who recited Hamotzi spoke before tasting the bread, but others at the table did not speak. Okay, I made Hamotzi and I started to talk about the stocks. So they may eat the bread without repeating the blessing. By listening to the blessing as if they had recited it for themselves and they fulfilled their obligations. Others disagree with this, but in practice, we follow Safek Brachot La'akel, and therefore, they don't have to repeat the blessing. What? You got it or not? But anyway, the guy who made the bracha is going to have to make another bracha, right? But they don't have to make another bracha.
He does?
Yeah, he will have to because he spoke. So what's happening is they're breaking it up. He said Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Now you're yotzeh because he said it. It's like you said it, but you didn't speak, right? You didn't speak, so your bracha is still good. So you can eat the bread. He spoke. He's gonna have to make another bracha. His bracha is no good, right? That's the split here.
Question. One more question.
Yeah.
Something a little bit off the topic. Let's say someone washes hands. They say, "Ah, let's like the dime." They dry their hands and then they forgot. They start speaking. Do they go back to wash again without bracha or with the bracha?
You definitely do not wash with the bracha.
Just wash again without bracha.
You don't necessarily have to wash again either. But if you want to wash again, it's okay. But definitely no bracha.
Just even if they spoke, they just continue sitting down.
Yes, technically, yeah. See on you.
I learned that Meikar Adin, that's I learned like my child came over to me as I was telling them always, no talking after Netilat Yadayim till Hamotzi.
Right.
Then they went to Shir by Rav Yaakov again. He says, Meikar Adin, even if you spoke, you do not need to do Netilat Yadayim Hamotzi or any Netilat Yadayim or Birkat Netilat Yadayim. And you can go straight into Hamotzi. Technically, if you're not Mesiach Da'at, it's best. But rather go straight into Hamotzi without talking is the best thing. But Meikar Adin, even if a person spoke, no need Netilat Yadayim, no need Hamotzi.
Right. So we did this, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that we did this. It's based on the Gemara. The Gemara says right after washing, you make the bracha. The question is, what washing this is? So we said based on the Rishonim, this is the washing of Ma'im Achronim and not Ma'im Rishonim. And therefore, Ma'im Rishonim, technically, if a person spoke in between, it's not considered something that's interruption, that you can't go on to Hamotzi. Therefore, you would be allowed to. But it does bring down that it's a nice thing to go and wash again, but you would wash again without a bracha for sure, because there's no, you didn't invalidate the bracha, invalidate the Netilat Yadayim to be having to say the bracha again. I think that's clear. Okay, moving on. Okay, now we said you have to eat the bread right away after making the bracha of Hamotzi. You cannot do other things. Now, I put the bread in my mouth. Is that considered eating, or I have to actually swallow it? Meaning, at what point is
Yeah,
it considered eaten? Avram, what do you want to say?
you have to swallow. Yeah, this is the
So
biggest problem
Avram
for
says
many.
you have to swallow it. You have to taste it. So let's take a look. That's why we're here. We're gonna
Then you speak.
get rid of some of the I thought I did or what my grandmother said. Let's take a look now. Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says you shouldn't talk. That he finished chewing and he swallowed it. Kivon the pasuk Shulchan Aruch lekman b'soif siman reish yud v'to'am levad in lo bala ein tzarich bracha. He said the Shulchan Aruch said that if a person is just tasting, right? He doesn't make a bracha. If he's just tasting, if you're not swallowing, you don't make a bracha. Im kain ikar bracha al habliya. So therefore, the main part of the bracha is swallowing it. Shulchan Aruch said if you're just tasting something, so I'm in the kitchen, I'm making a steak. I want to see if the sauce tastes good. Right? And I taste it. I don't make a bracha. I'm just tasting it. Okay? When you have to make the bracha, Shulchan Aruch says, when you're swallowing it. So it must be that eating is swallowing. Right? Nevertheless, in Kol Malkum, im avar v'sach be'odo lo es kodem shebola haprusa, dvarim she'eno mitzarchei suda. But if someone put it in his mouth, and he's just chewing it now, and now he started to speak about the stocks, Mishnah Berurah says, I'm not sure. I have to look into it, whether you have to make another bracha. Seeming to me, meaning that maybe you don't have to make another bracha. That just tasting it should be enough. Yeah.
Meat. If I put a meat sandwich, pastrami sandwich, put it in my mouth, I bought it, I take a bite, chew it, I don't like it, and I spit it out.
Yeah.
That's considered I'm
Now you're fleshing or not?
from here.
In regards to fleshing or b'chala?
No flesh. If I'm
If
flesh,
it's basari now, he put the taste on the
didn't
meat.
swallow, I didn't eat it. I took a chew feel, I spit it out.
I should know this. I don't remember right now, but I should know this.
It depends on if it's stuck in the teeth or in the sauce.
Yeah, what's the reason for waiting also, right?
The way we learned it, I remember, for example, if you have a sick person, they give you from a tube.
Yeah,
There is no such thing 6 hours
yeah.
because the main part is from here.
The taste.
So there's two parts to it. There is one which is chewing is stuck in the teeth, and there's another one, shumanim, which are inside the stomach. Takes 6 hours. So according to one opinion, it's the stomach that breaks it down 6 hours. According to another opinion, it's the ones that are stuck in the teeth is 6 hours to get rid of. So if you have it in your mouth, if you break it up with maybe something dry like a cracker or take something to drink, maybe that's.
But your idea of taste, that's what we're saying. Is it a taste or the swallow? It's the same idea. Yeah. So here in the Bir Halacha of the Mishnah Berurah or the Chafetz Chaim, he writes you should be very careful about this because the Magen Avram, the Ilya Rabbah, they all hold that chewing is not called eating, swallowing it. So if you speak before you swallow, you're gonna have to make another bracha Hamotzi. But then he says many Achronim say this is lechatchila, but b'di avad, if you chewed, it's enough. And he says he says in my own humble opinion, if we really look into this, because the Rambam he holds that the bracha is swallowing, right? Like the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch holds like the Rambam. If without swallowing, but only chewing, it's not called eating. It's just called tasting. And this is something that you have to look at. So what does the Yalkut Yosef say? For us, Yalkut Yosef and the Or Letzion he brings down over here. What do they say? The Chatchila on page 248. The Chatchila ain't l'davar dvar b'teim ad sheyivla me'hapaz. You should not speak anything unrelated to the meal until you swallow the bread. But if he spoke while he's still chewing, ain't tzarich. So you don't have to go back. Shekiva shekvanato la'achila below l'te'ima. So here's an interesting reason here. The Yalkut Yosef says because it's different when you taste to taste and when you're tasting to eating. When you're in the kitchen and you're trying the steak sauce and you want to see if it tastes good, you don't have to say, bro, because you're never planning to actually eat it. You just tasted it to taste it. right? But when you're sitting down on the meal, you make Hamotzi, and then you're putting it in your mouth. It's like the beginning of eating, even though you didn't swallow it yet. Your plan is to swallow it, right? It's like maybe similar in idea to Shabbat when you put something on the fire before Shabbat, even though it's not yet cooked, it's already considered cooked because it's in the process started already. So similar here, he's saying that the te'ima, the tasting of it is the kavanah for achila. It's not kavanah just to taste it. But he said as long as his palate benefits, this is sufficient. So lichatchila, don't speak until you swallow. Okay, but if you did speak, seems that you don't have to say another bracha because it's the beginning of the swallowing. That's the way the Yalkut Yosef takes a look at this. If you have the English edition, you have Yosef over there, page 245, halacha 24. If someone recited Hamotzi, took a bite of the bread, and then spoke before swallowing it, not necessary to repeat the blessing. Nevertheless, one should avoid speaking at all until swallowing at least some of the food. One should not even speak words of Torah. You should really swallow before you even start speaking words of Torah. If someone puts food in his mouth, gives an interesting case, and he hears Kaddish or Nagdishach or someone else making a bracha, he may respond the main even before swallowing any food. Okay, so for answering Amen, answering Nagdishach, you could, even though you didn't swallow it. Okay, what about sucking candy? So let's see it in here first, in the Piskei Tshuvot, in the Tzurba Rabbanan, page 248, source 55. Sucking candies, right? These are the hard candies. Remember my grandmother, she lived and be well. She used to, when we were little kids, she used to come and give us those mint, the big white mint candies that come in that blue clear plastic thing.
Very good.
Yeah, they're very good. They used to have the lemon flavor too. Now they make a million different colors of them. It was like the yellow or the white one. And you always wish grandma gave you, the BB would give you the yellow one, but you always got the white one instead. And like as kids, you don't like mint as much. But that's the candy that we're talking about. The sucking candy. Well, you don't chew it. You don't chew it, you don't swallow it. You're just tasting it. Kivan shekain derech achilatam, said this is the derech of eating it. And through this sucking, that is its eating. The sucking of a sucking candy is the eating. L'chein kol shibala mehatam hayotze min asuchira mutar lo lehefsek. Once he swallowed the taste of the candy, that's considered that he already swallowed, and then it's permitted to interrupt. But once he put it in his mouth already, if he once already put it in his mouth and he tasted it without swallowing the taste, that's already okay. If he spoke, he doesn't have to repeat it again. So this is the case. You have the sugar candy, the sucking candy. You make the bracha, you put it in your mouth. You suck it, and once you swallow that sweetness, that's already considered that you ate it. That's the part where you're allowed to talk with chatchila. But if you put it in your mouth and now you taste it a little bit, you got the flavor, but you didn't yet swallow the taste, then if you talk with the HaBa'a, you don't have to repeat. He says here in the Yalkut Yosef, and in the footnote here, 183, he says, same is true by sucking candies, like we brought from Piskei Tshuvot, and he says the same is true with chewing gum. When you chew flavored gum, the same idea. You're not going to swallow the gum, but once you put it in, once you swallow that taste, then you could officially talk with chatchila. But if you want to put it in, you already got the taste, and then you spoke, you do not have to repeat the bracha. Okay? So far, so good. Now, I think that, Rav Avram, this comes now to your question about saying the bracha Hamotzi and then walking to the refrigerator to get something from there. Is that a hefsek or not? So let's see what he brings over here. Just as it's forbidden to interrupt by speaking between the bracha and eating, it's also asur lechatchila to stop in other manners, such as long silence or walking from place to place. Mishnah Berurah says, really, lechatchila, you shouldn't even interrupt between saying the bracha and eating the bread. That's mean Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. That's about 1.5 seconds. Already, you shouldn't be past that, even just waiting. So based on this, the Mishnah Berurah then cites the Taz, who writes, for this reason, the one who cuts the bread should first begin to eat his own piece and only then give it out to others on the table. Okay, I think most people do this, right? This is what I do it at least. Everyone does it like that. You make Hamotzi, you take your bread, you dip it into the salt 3 times, you bite in it, right? You start eating it, and then you start giving to everyone else. You don't make the bracha, put your piece, put it down, put everyone else's piece. You eat yours right away because you should be really eating it within a few seconds.
Another question, real quick.
Yeah.
After I break the bread, I break another piece and put it in my mouth, or I bite it directly?
You break it off. What do you mean bite it directly?
When I made a bracha, I take a piece for myself, I dip it in 3 times.
So,
Do I bite the bread directly, or I break another piece and take a little piece?
I think most people just put it in their mouth. I mean, how big are you cracking the bread that you have?
No, I'm just saying, it's like
It's like mannerism.
If it's a gigantic piece of bread, you're right. If it's a gigantic piece of bread that it looks like you're glutton by eating such a big piece of bread,
what's the
it would make sense to break it again.
Sephardi custom?
Yeah,
I generally just bite it because by that time I break another bit, it takes more time, so I just bite it and just give it out usually.
Takes a split second, just a pinch.
Just take a pinch and eat it, and then move on.
Because it's normal.
You're breaking it apart. So, like I said, it really depends on the size of the bread. I think you're cutting
Better to pinch it off.
Right, if you're eating a big slice, and you're eating it, it's not going to look nice to put it in your mouth. So you should take over a piece.
Okay.
But if you're having, like when I used to use the pyoshkas, right? So you crack it, it's like it's a fistful. You're not really.
Yeah, I take a small piece. I don't take a big one.
Then you just put it in. It's not like a big deal. You put it down and you continue. But if I'm saying
some pyoshka are very hard to bite. So
that's true.
So you got to feel it first. Okay, it makes sense to cut off a little bit first. More. Yeah, there's no problem with cutting it off a little bit first. There's no issue with that. So if it makes sense to you to do it, then do it. I hear you. There are some pyoshkas that are very stretchy, and some of them are very hard, and
you can kill somebody.
One time, someone gave me this lipyoshka, said, "You're gonna love it." I ate it; it was so hard. He said, "This is Samarkandsky." I said, "I'm from Samarkand. I never had such a bread before. I didn't know it was more crunchy than the other one."
Right after
I think it was just stale. If you leave it out a day or two, package it right, it's gonna get hard. Okay. Anyway, I got on the side for a second. I used to work in Brooklyn on Friday mornings. I would leave my work around 5:30 in the morning, and I would go to the Tandoori Bakery. There was a Bukharian bakery on 48th Street on 13 in Borough Park, and I would come there 5 o'clock in the morning. They're baking there. The sveji lipyoshas, fresh bread coming right out. Smells like heaven in there. And the guy knows me, my family and everything. He says, "Moshe, wait right here." He gives me like 3. He doesn't let me take from the basket. He waits for this is gonna be finished in 2 minutes. Just wait. Takes 3 of them. Right? I used to buy 3 of them, $1.50 a piece, $1.25 a piece. I used to take some non-toki also, and then I used to drive back from Brooklyn to Rockaway. The whole cart was just smacked. They have a nice smell of the bread. And then I had such a hard to eat it Friday morning because it's smells so good. But I had to hold myself back and take it home, and then I would put it into a plastic bag. They sold it to me in a paper bag. Paper bag doesn't hold it good. Right, it's going to become hard already by Shabbat. So I would switch it into a plastic bag. You can't put it into plastic right away because it's very hot as soon as it comes off. You have to wait for it to cool down a little bit, and then you put it into a plastic bag, and it preserves its freshness over Shabbat. You have tasted really fresh bread. But I was just speaking about fresh bread. I remember. Okay, let's move on. I brought over here page 241, but I think we already spoke about this. Okay. At 241, the Alkut Yosef, after reciting the blessing of Hamotzi, one must taste the bread immediately. It's forbidden to speak between the blessing and eating the bread. It's best, if possible, to avoid more than waiting 1 second. Likewise, one must perform any activity for eating unless it's related to the meal for which this blessing was recited. Okay. Let's see the Piskei Teshuvot here on page 249. One may certainly not perform any action that is not necessary for cutting the bread. One should not cut the slices of bread for the other diners who are fulfilling the obligation with his bracha until after he's eaten some of the bread. Right? This is like we said for the Mishnah Berurah. You want to eat some of it before you give everyone else. Similarly, one must be careful and particularly not to walk from one place to another until he has swallowed what is in his mouth. Right? Don't start going looking for something else now. You sit down, you eat. One should not walk further than 2 cubits, even in the same room, unless he must do so for the sake of eating, in which case it's permitted to walk even from one room to another. So this is your question, Avram. You say, can I go to the refrigerator to get something for the meal? So if it's for the meal, it's okay. But if it's not for the meal, it's considered a hefsek. But then he says inside and outside, one house to another house, you should avoid this. Okay, that's what he says over here. All right, now he comes to an interesting shayla over here. I didn't see in the Yalkut Joseph they bring up this point at all. But here, the question: some people, while they're waiting for the bread to get to them, they hum a tune. They're waiting for the bread, so they do a little bit of a song. Right? They sing something, a little tune. Is humming a tune considered a hefsek? Okay. Is this considered a hefsek? Of Shmuel Wozner in his Shevet Alevi. Let's see what he says about this. Shal im negina havi kedibor Indian hefsek oiloi. Says I was asked whether humming a tune is considered a hefsek or not. He says since the post can mention a tune is interruption when responding a main in tefillah, but it's not mentioned by a main, but not for the other parts of tefillah, middle of tefillah. Like you're not allowed to say a tune before answering a main. You have to answer a main right away, right? But you're allowed to make in the middle of tefillah somewhere. You're allowed to stop and make tunes. If you're ever done by Hasidim, they're notorious for doing this. Like they'll say one word and then it's hamdulillah, hamdulillah for like 10 minutes, and then it's the next word. Okay. I would also advise you on the weeks that you read the 4 parashiyot, don't daven by Hasidim because they say yotzers. This is an extra tefillah that they say in the middle of the repetition of the Shemona Esrei, which has a lot more music to that as well. So they do that. The Hasidim known to do this in the middle of tefillah, but not between the end of the bracha and amen, because maybe it's not an interruption. So he says, if in the middle of tefillah, maybe it's considered being silent. So what does he say? He says in the look at the bold part in 250. But he says, but yeah, we do not have sufficient basis to say it's also, and the question of this honor is resolved. So basically, he says, don't hum, but if you hum, it's not considered a hefsek. So what the Rav Shmuel Wozner says. The Minhat Yitzchak takes a more strict approach, and he says, no, it's forbidden to even hum. It's forbidden to hum. Therefore, you say bracha amen, and you sit silent and you wait for the bread to come to you. Like I said, I couldn't find anything in the Yalkut Yosef. I didn't get the chance to look in the Halacha Berurah or other places, but for my, I was preparing the shir in the car today, so I didn't have all my svarim there, but it would seem to be more strict in this case. There's no clear, so lechatchila you definitely shouldn't do it, right? And if you did do it, then I would say, Hamotzi would say safek brachat lahakel, since it's a safek, whether it is a hefsek or not. So he would say not, based on his derech klal, he would say not to repeat the bracha, but lechatchila, no humming between the amen and eating the bread. Okay, yes, Malkiel.
Is it similar to halakha in the bathroom when allowed to speak? And it says the halakha says that you shouldn't even in the bathroom to make like the noise. So maybe it's considered like very similar to talking itself.
I'm not sure because I don't think the bathroom has anything to do with hefsek, with interruption. I think the bathroom has to do with.
But it's like considered talking. So we're talking about here talking. Is
so you're saying,
is it considered as talking?
Okay, al-sadin of talking, humming might be considered talking. Okay,
right, just that. Like in a bathroom, we're not allowed to hum.
I can hear that. I can hear that. Again, it makes sense. It makes sense that apparently dibor is more than just actual words. Apparently dibor can be sounds, right? That would explain the power of the shofar, right? The shofar is a way of it's a form of talking, but it sounds, right? It's the crying. That's a powerful sound. So that's an interesting idea. Okay, so this ends off the Hilchot of Hamotzi. I thought it would be nice to start the next year on another very important halakha. Just to start the hakdama of this, Mr. Hashem, like we said, the next 2 weeks we'll go into Hilchot Pesach, and then we'll come back after Pesach, continuing in the Shiurim. We're coming into what's known as Hilchot HaBa'a Kisnin, if I'm reading that correctly. Okay, of breads that come the Kisnin. Okay, now what does Kisnin mean? That's going to be a three-way machloket Rishonim, actually Rishonim and Gaonim, because I think the last ones are High Gaon. His opinion. What is pot above a kisnin? Okay, what's the big deal about a pot above a kisnin? First of all, it's like bread, but it gets the status of mizonot. All right, this is everyone knows. You eat cake. For bracha you're making on cake, made mizonot. It's made out of the same materials, pretty much, flour and water with additives, and you're making a mizonot on it. So what is a pat haba b'kisnin? And what bracha is on it? So first of all, let's see the way we start on page 259 in Hilchot Pat Haba B'Kisnin Shir Aleph. Keitza, he brings the first Mishnah. Keitza mivarchim ala perot. Right, this is Perik Vav, Mishnah Aleph and Brachot, famous Mishnah. What bracha do you make on fruits from the trees? Al perot ha'ilan omer bore peri ha'etz chutz min hayayin. Except for wine, which comes from the grapes. Omer bore peri hagefer. On the wine, we make bore peri hagefer. Val perota aretz omer bore pri adama. On the fruit of the ground, we make bore peri adama. Chutz min hapat. Except for bread. Bread comes from the ground. It comes from wheat. Right? Sha'al hapatu omer hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Right? These are the special food. Wine is a specialty. Bread is a specialty. So it gets its own special bracha. Ba'al yerakot, and on vegetables, omer peri ha'adama. Bore peri ha'adama. Rabbi Yehuda omer bore minei d'shaim. A person makes the blessing on greens. He makes the blessing of d'shaim, which is, I think, means like grass and stuff. So we don't have that bracha. Rabbi Yehuda's shot in the Gemara is that he wants to be more specific. Make more specific brachot. He doesn't want to say on every type of vegetable, bari priyadama. He rather say, for the grass, for that stuff. Now, says the Rambam, ha'ochal pat chayav levarach lefanei brachot Hashem k'melech olam hamotzi lachem min ha'aretz. Right? The Mishnah said the Rambam passes that leha ulacha. What about food that is made from wheat, but is not bread? What do we do with this? Right? The Gemara is going to say that such a case, it's called hapata ba b'kisnin. Why is it called b'kisnin? We have to find what this means. Bread that comes from kisnin. And it says that you make a mezonot unless you're koveya seuda. Unless you're koveya seuda on it. Then you would make a hamotzi on it. So let's take a look at the Gemara. Masechet Berachot Mem Bet Amud Aleph. The Tanya Bimona Omer Shum Yehuda Pata Ba B'Kisnin Mevarach Aleya Hamotzi Va'Amar Shmuel Halacha Kre Bimona. So Rabbi Mona says on desserts, on cakes, Pata Ba B'Kisnin you make Hamotzi, and Shmuel says that's halacha. Amar Lahu Ein Halacha Kre Bimona. Halacha is not a Kre Bimona. Itmar, as it was said, Amar Le. V'hamar the Amar Mishmei de Shmuel Lachmaniot Maravin Bahen Muvarachin Alei Hamotzi. Lachmaniot, this is wafers. This is a dessert food. It's a Haba Kisnin. You can make eruv. You can make an eruv. Right? You need the food to make an eruv. Or you can make hamotzi on it. Shani hatem de kavas udatea alayhu. Because you're kaveya suda on it, you can make a hamotzi. But if you didn't koveya suda on it, then no, you do not make hamotzi, but rather you make bore minei mizonot. So the Gemara says about this, hapat haba b'kisnin, whatever this is, we're going to see what it is in a minute, but whatever it is, if you eat it for a snack, it's mizonot. If you eat it as a meal, it's going to get the din of hamotzi. Okay, we're going to get into the halachot how much is considered a meal, right? To be kovea seuda. But until this point, let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Mishnah Berurah says, Shani Elu. These hapada kisnin is different. The end data b'nei adam l'kavod sudatan aleim. Most people don't sit down to a cake for a meal. Most people don't go into gourmet gladen and buy themselves a strawberry shortcake or a 6-inch cake and say this is my lunch. Most people don't do that. Barak oichlem otan mi'at. You eat just a little bit of it, right? You have a birthday, you take out a cake, everyone gets a little slice. That's the way you eat them. The pikach birkatan rak bori minei mezonot, and balachareya baracha me'in shalosh, and afterwards you make the bracha me'in shalosh. Elim kain achol kashir kaviyat seuda, unless he eats the shear of the kaviyat seuda, the az mivarech hamotzi ubirkat hamazon. Unless he eats a suda measure, then he makes hamotzi, and he's going to make birkat hamazon afterwards.
That's 216 grams, 256.
Yes, I believe it's 216 grams. 216 grams is when you kovea seuda. Is that correct? I believe that's correct. Yosef? Is it? How much is it? What's kovea seuda? 250? How much is it? 200 something, he says over here. He doesn't bring it right now, but to be kovea seuda, I thought I saw it today somewhere when I was learning it. Okay, well, when we get to it, we'll get to it. I'm not sure. I'll see if I can look it up afterwards.
160.
That's what he says here, right?
Page 266.
Page 266. He says 216. Okay, the Yalkut said 216 grams. The Yoter. Okay, yeah. 216 grams. Okay. Once you eat more than 216 grams, you have to do Netilat Yadayim, you have to watch Hamotzi, and you have to make Birkat Hamazon. Okay? Now we're talking about a Pata Baba Kisnin. A Pata Baba Kisnin. This is Mazonon to the Kovea Suda. Yes, Avram.
Natzalat is with bracha or without bracha?
What do you mean?
Well, 216 grams I eat, and then I realize it's a suda. I make natzalat with the bracha or without.
So if you're planning to eat 216 grams of cake, you're going to make Netilat Yadayim, you're going to make Hamotzi, and you're going to make Birkat Hamazon. You're treating it exactly like bread.
Let's say it was not planned. It was just
Say again?
It was not planned. I was just eating, and then all of a sudden, I remember I ate more than enough. The suda,
So you weren't sure. You sat down to eat one piece of cake,
right?
And then your Yetzer Hara got you to eat the whole cake, right? So at this point, you just gotta say Birkat Hamazon.
But I still wash though. I think I learned that you have to wash without bracha.
How could you wash if you didn't know you're gonna eat all that? You're gonna wash now when you're
That's the whole thing. You planned not to eat, then all of a sudden you ate a certain amount, then you go wash without bracha because you want to plan.
You're saying you're going to continue to eat after 216? You're going more?
Maybe yeah, maybe not, and then you just say Birkat Hamazon right after.
I don't know. I remember learning that if you ate and then you went past the 216, so now you're going to make a hamotzi. I don't remember learning to wash, but maybe when we get through continue the halachot, we'll see that. At this point, our job now is to define what is hapat haba b'kisnin. Okay, so we're going to go into the first opinion. Here it seems to be brought. The Rabbeinu Yonah is bringing it in the Rif, and he's bringing it. The Aruch also brings it from the Rabbeinu Hananel. Okay, Rabbeinu Hananel is a Rishon, so let's take a look. Perish Rabbeinu Hananel, the pat haba b'kisnin, Ritzonel Omar haba b'kisin, that is coming in pockets. She'oseh min ha'isa kimo kis, as if you're making a pocket in the bread. Umachnisem bifnim shekedim, you're bringing in their almonds with vash, honey, uminimetika, and other sweet things. So Rabbeinu Hananel says a pata baba kisnin is what? Is pastries, filled pastries. take a pastry and you fill it. This is a HaBa'a kisin. That's why it's called kisin, a HaBa'a kisin, because it is bikisin. It's in a pocket. That's definition number one. Okay, so definition number one is it's a pocket-filled pastry. Okay, I'm just I don't want to miss something here. Hold on. Fine. So that's Rabbeinu Hanana. Here he brings down, you have to be very medaic in his words. He says that you fill it up with almonds, honey, or other sweet things. Because if it's filled with meat or cheese, it's not going to be considered mizonot. Meat and cheese, meat or cheese, or spinach for that matter, or even mushrooms, those are not desserts, not mini mitika, they're not sweet things. That's going to be kept, not barekas. Barekas is a different din because the bareka dough is an oily dough. It's a flaky dough. Here we're talking about your classical gosh gejeh. Okay, your classical gosh gejeh is made out of
meat, onion.
It's made out of meat on the inside, but it's made bread dough. It's regular dough. According to this, is not what Rabbeinu Hanana was saying is mizonot. Everyone says that this is a hamotzi. According to everyone, gosh gejeh is hamotzi. It is. It's hamotzi. Yes, if you're eating gosh gejeh, it's hamotzi.
You eat it as a snack or if you eat it as a meal?
If you're eating gosh gejeh, the bread
Is it a snack or is it meal?
it doesn't make a difference. The bread is hamotzi. The meat filled inside keeps it to hamotzi. If it's sweet inside and now it's a pastry, then it's mizonot. That's the definition here. Okay. Now, that's why samsa is different. We didn't get into samsa yet, but because the dough is different. It's an oil-filled dough. It's a flaky dough. That dough gets a different status, and that's why it's mizonot. But from what we're seeing right now, gosh gejeh would be hamotzi if it's made out of bread dough, and bread dough that you have stuff filled inside. Now you put in cherry pie filling. That's going to be mizonot. If you're eating it as a snack, you're not kaveh suda. That's opinion number one of what a HaBa'a kisnin is. Now,
even if it's a snack, right? It's just one, and I'm just snacking.
You're eating
one
a cherry.
Gosh
Cherry,
gejeh regular.
a gosh gejeh regular.
Small one,
Right.
let's say small, not the big ones, that they do. Small gosh gejeh as a snack.
Technically, it seems to be hamotzi.
Hamotzi. Okay.
If it's bread dough, it's not the samsa, it's not the flaky dough.
Right, the bread dough, right, and
Right.
it's just small, just snacking. I'm just putting it, so it seems that it's hamotzi. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna get into it later on. We're gonna get into it. Alka Yosef brings it in. We'll get into Be'ezat Hashem. The Rambam's definition of a HaBa'a kisnin. Now, this is the idea of the flaky dough because this is based on the Rambam. What does he say? V'chein isa shelosha b'dvash or b'shemen or b'chalav or she'irav ba'minei tavlin b'afar. So if someone took dough and he was Neelish, he kneaded it in with sweetness or with milk or with oil. That's your samsa dough is an oil dough. This is based on the Rambam. And you filled it in with all these things. This is a HaBa'a kisnin. This is the mizonot. Af ishu pat. Then you have to make a hamotzi. So if you eat enough samsa, you still have to make a motzi on it because you kaveh suda on it. But one flaky dough or bread dough, because not bread dough, cake dough. Cake is that's what they do. They mix it with sugar, mix it in with oils. They put all sorts of sweetness in it. So such a case, it would be mizonot. He would definitely say it's hamotzi. He doesn't even hold. Ram doesn't even hold Rabbeinu Hanana pockets. He doesn't hold of it. His whole din is in the status of the dough. How is the dough made? That's the Rambam. Right? The Rambam shita is the dough. What's the dough made out of? So according to the Rambam, gojeh is for definitely hamotzi. Right? Your question is in Rabbeinu Hanana. Did he mean matika? I mean, it has to really be sweet, or it could be anything in the pocket. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
When the Rambam says that it has to be dafka needed,
Yeah.
right? So while making the dough, the gush gijeh,
Yeah.
right? I am taking the dough,
Uh-huh.
I am filling it up with the spices, the onions, the meat,
Right.
and now and I'm closing it up.
Yeah.
Would you consider this as needed as because it's going to be baked and it's going to be mitarev, the oils
So
and
he
the
says
dough
shalosh.
together?
It means that.
Right. That's I'm asking. I understand. I saw it.
Right.
So the question is dafka lasha or
Yeah. Dafka
once
lasha. Dafka has to be in the consistency of the dough. The dough has to be a sweet dough or a mixed dough. It's not flour and water. That's what he says. Now, how much is considered a sweet dough? I mean, if I put in a gram of sugar or I put in a teaspoon of oil, is that already considered for the Rambam HaBa'a kisnin that I can make mizonot on it? So the Beit Yosef says, nikar be'isa. Be'isa.
So now that the gush gijeh is being cooked with the meat, onions, and everything, now that I'm taking it apart, I'm opening it up. Let's say I'm taking out all the meat.
Yeah.
I took out all the meat.
I know where you're going with this.
I'm eating now only the bread. I'm feeling all the spices. I'm feeling all the taste. I'm feeling it's not just dough. It's not bread.
But you're not feeling that taste in the bread.
I am.
No, you're not. You're feeling it in the meat.
No. The meat I took out.
It's not the bread.
I took out the meat.
You're
I'll tell you where I'm coming from.
I know what you're coming from. You're saying now it's in the dough, now it's sweet, now it's not considered a mochi anymore.
I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place where Rav Yitzhak Yosef was in Tov, and there were a bunch of guys who were forever asking these questions about the Pat Rabbi Kisnin. The Rav was always, you say, on a limbo. Pat Rabbi Kisnin, is it mizonot? Is it part of the Suda? So there's no questions. They made the Gush Gijeh in front of Rav Yitzhak Yosef. And they said to him, Rav Yitzhak Yosef, Mechila, can I offer you a Gush Gijeh? What do I make on this? What do I make on it? They take the Gush Gijeh and they open it up like this, and they were dripping oils from it. What's the question? He says, no. That's why I was building it to see oil on meat. Doesn't matter. Let's say I take out the meat. The bread is now tasting like the meat, like the onions, like the spices that you put in, cumin, salt, pepper.
You're gonna know that it was gush gijeh. You're gonna know that this was gush gijeh.
Yeah, it's not bread. It's not the lipioshka.
What's halacha? What's supposed to say?
So
Yeah.
So we'll get into that halacha further. Let's just finish the definition. Let's finish the definition of a pot of bava kisnin. So first of all, we had the Rabbeinu Chananel sweet filled dough. Okay. Then we have the Rambam. The dough itself is sweet. How sweet it has to be. So now we're up to the Beit Yosef that it has to be nikar be'isa. You have to be able to taste the mixture in the dough. And this is a nira ikar, and this seems to be correct. That it has to be tasteable. Okay, that's the way Sfaradim hold. That once you can taste, it doesn't matter how much sugar you put in, doesn't matter how much oil you put in. Because once you can taste it in there, then it becomes the status of mizonot.
This is what we do on the Purim.
That's what. What? I don't know what those words are. What is that?
Purim between the bread, okay.
And you can taste the oil. So as long as you're not kaveh suda on it, then yeah, it's going to be mizonot.
Potato is the same idea.
I don't know.
With onions.
With
onions.
Frying things?
Yeah, fine.
I don't know. This much I don't know. Okay. Now the Darchei Moshe, right? This is the Ramah on his commentary on the Tur. He says differently. Ela im kain ikar ha'isa nilush be'otan dvarim. Unless the dough is primarily kneaded with those substances.
He's saying that.
The Rambam says it's
right. So why is he coming to say the same thing?
No, what he's saying is, the Ramah. And he does also with the Beit Yosef and Shulchan Aruch also. They have Beit Yosef seems to be a Rishon and the Shulchan Aruch seems to be No, I don't know. Man. Just the way he sets it up here, maybe there's some shot. But let's just understand the Derech Moshe for a minute. So what he's saying is different because the question now is, when does it become mizanot? The Rambam just said as long as it's needed with that. So the Beit Yosef said that means that you can taste it. But Derech Moshe says no, you have to knead it with the primary component is being the sweet stuff.
It's different than
The Beit Yosef is different than No, the Rambam just said if you mixed it, if you made a taruva in the lisha and the kneading, you mixed it with something other than water, it becomes a pada babakisnin. The question now is how much it has to be mixed with something else. So the Beit Yosef says as long as you can taste it, it can be 1 gram as long as you can taste it, it becomes mizanot. The Rambam says no, you put just 1 gram of sugar, even if you taste it, it's still not mizanot until the majority. Right? What does he say? It can ikar ha'isa. The doesn't say majority, but it says ikar ha'isa. The main part of the isa is needed with those substances. We're going to be dealing with this. This is, for example, this is a famous example of the mizonos bread. Okay, so you have these breads that the companies decided to label mizonos bread. Okay, so what do? They put apple juice in that. Now you take the bread. Do you taste the apple juice? You don't. So according to us Sfaradim, that bread is still hamotzi because the Beit Yosef said you have to discern the taste. According to Ashkenazim, who will hold like this Ramah, we're going to see that many poskim don't hold it this way of reading the Ramah, but the OU does and others do. They're saying that that since it has apple juice, it's primarily with apple juice. You can't taste it. It's going to be mizonot. That's where the chiluk comes in. Okay.
Needed together.
Yes.
Not needed, but
Smear on. We'll deal with that later. Pizza is going to be hamotzi. If it's dough, the dough is bread dough, and it's not sweet dough, hamotzi. It's going to be hamotzi. That's the way Sfaradim are going to pass it. And so we're going to see in the Alka Joseph, he's going to bring all these ideas, but I'm not. Today we're just going into the definition. But Hashem after Pesach, we'll come back and go through case to case. Okay, now we have to come to the last opinion. This is Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon was the last of the Gaonim in Baghdad, and he was from all the Gaonim. He was the greatest of Gaonim. He has the most letters, the most commentary, the most everything. There's a very nice short biography of him over here, a blurb over here. If you want to read on page 263, if you have some time later, I would recommend you to look at it. But for our case right now, we have to read the definition of Hai Gaon. So he brings the Aruch, the Beit Yosef brings the Aruch, who explains in the name of Rabbeinu Hai, in the Rav Hai Gaon, the Pada Baba Kisnin 263. Our biscuits. He pad ben metubela du ben she'enu metubela she'osim ota ke'achin yevashim, that they're dry and they're chewed on, and they're both at parties and outside parties. People eat them in small amounts, and he says this is the. He says based on the Targum in Yehoshua, you'll see that this is what it means kisnin. Then it means dry and crunchy. So this is your non toki. Okay, so this is your non toki. Your non toki is a dry and a crunchy. Dry and a crunchy piece, right? It's bread, but it's dry and crunchy. So therefore, it's going to be mizanot. Unless you're kaveya sikuda on it, then you would have to make a hamotzi. And this would be the status of matzah throughout the year, right? The status of matzah throughout the year for us is a dry and crunchy. It's going to be mizanot because it's called a pada baba kisnin. Okay. Okay, fine. That's Rav Hai Gaon's shita. So we have our 3 shitot.
But it is bread. Originally, it was bread.
The bread, it's bread dough,
Dried.
and you made it dry. You made it to cracker.
Pita crisp. They're mizunot.
Pita crisp. So you're saying it was bread, and then he dried them out like suchariki, right? They take the bread and they make it dry afterwards. That's what you're saying. So we have to deal with this is different because what's happening here, you're taking the dough and you're creating it to a cracker immediately. What's happening with suchareki or pita crust, they make it pita. Suchareki is when they take the bread and then they take it and they put it in the oven, they dry it out, make it like a biscuit. Okay. Croutons. So that might be a little different. I'm not getting into the things right now, but I understand where you're coming from. And that might be different. The chiluk would be there is the first is made into a bread and then it goes into a drier state. Here, I think where Rav Gaon is saying is where you
also made it into a bread and then it became
no, it's made into a biscuit.
No, but it says it is a bread.
It's a bread,
right now,
because it's made from bread dough.
Right, and then it only becomes which is made
as dry brisket.
Right, then it becomes
No, which is made as dry biscuit. It is made originally as dry biscuit.
The first time it went into the oven, it was made.
The kavana to be made dry right away.
What he's talking about, the key is put into the oven twice.
Right.
To make bread and then achaka to make it.
Right, and that might be different. Okay, and that might be different. There's a second stage there. Okay, we'll take all that as Hashem as we continue. Now, what did we hold halacha l'maisa? So we have three Rishonim. We have the Rabbeinu Chananel, we have the Rambam, and we have Rav Gaon. And what do we paskin halacha l'maisa? So we go like everyone. The Indian halacha, given the sveika, b'midi derabanan hu. It's a sveika in a rabbinic matter. We take everyone, whether we fill it up with honey and almonds, and here the Beit Yosef brings down some sort of desserts, I assume, Rosh Kiliash and Dil Chashab, or something in his time, or in his place. Uvein Isa, Shiravuba, May Peros, or May Tavlin, Nikra, Bishkugash, some sort of name. Okay, and the Kulam, Din Pasa, Bobby Kistan Yeshlahem, Enuvar Chaleim. I'm not sure. Right, maybe. Kulam Din Pasa, Bobby Kistan Yeshlahem, Enuvar Chaleim, Hamotzi, Ushlosh Brachos, and Kain Kavasu, the To Alav, O Achol Shir, Shadervni Adam, Likvoa Allah. Okay, a person eats a fixed meal on this. Interestingly, what about if there's a food that has all three categories, all three opinions of a parababakistan? Okay, so here he brings. It turns out, he says baklava. Okay, baklava is made of sweet dough, so that's the Rambam, right? With oil and sugar, and it's filled with layers of almonds. So that's the Rabbeinu Chananel, and then it's crunchy when fresh. It's often crunchy when fresh. So that's Rav Gaon. So what happens there? If you're kovei suda on at a parababa kistin that has all three shitot,
Or not?
No, you could still be called for that. You said once you have over 2.
you still.
You don't maybe become Amazon. I would say Amazon.
What happens? It says over here.
Everybody's must be good. Because you could ask that.
What happens if here's the case? You want to eat after the meal. You made hamotzi, and now you want to eat desserts. So now you take out a cake. So do you make a bracha on the cake or not? There was a part of the hamotzi.
Not unless it's baklava.
Not unless it's baklava. Why?
It has the din, koses, maleh, and matuk.
Because it's all three, right?
That's the only time you make it on mezonot. Otherwise, you on 7-layer on sponge cake, all the rest. Cookies.
Right, because then it's a shayla. If it is a papa kisnein or it is, it's part of the seudah. But here it's definitely about a papa kisnein. So therefore, there are those who say you would have to say an extra bracha on that.
Everybody.
There are those who say. He says there's some disagree with that. Let's finish up where I want to get up to. How much time we have? Versus his mom. 3 more minutes. Okay, let's see if we can finish up.
Napoleon cake is the same?
Napoleon cake is what? It's a flaky dough.
It's
Hamotzi
covers it?
It's the Rambam. It's the Rambam, right? It's a flaky dough.
Mizanot, 100%.
Yeah. It's the Rambam. So the question is, why is it okay to make mizanot on this? Says the Bach, the Beit Chadash. Why is that? Because the Beit Yosef says it's lekula. Diktin kedivrei kulam lehakel to say mizanot on all three of these. You don't know which one it is. Why is that? Why is that okay as a kula to make a mizanot on them? So says the Drisha that he says mizanot is like a shahak. That a mizanot is like a covering all bracha. Because what does it mean? Borei minei mizanot. Great food that sustains. Doesn't mean it's made out of wheat. So therefore, it's like a covering all brachas, like a shahako. Therefore, you can use it in all three categories, even though you're not sure if this is really HaBa'a babikisnin or not. Shulchan Aruch says the same thing. The halacha accords with all three, and all three of them we apply this din of a pata babikisnin. Okay, and just end off on 266, source 15. The Yalkut Yosef. Yalkut Yosef says the pata babikisnin mivarach alav bari me'mizanos. So lachra brachot achad mein shalosh. Upad public is who I'll call Elu Mivarach Bar Mizanos Lachem Al Michka Them Kvei Suda Toleim the Haim Shachol 260 gram Vayoter Not the Yodov Mivarach Aleim Hamotzi Lachem in Aretz Uperkat Hamazon. Eat more than 216 grams, it's going to be considered a full-fledged bread, and you would have to say Hamotzi, and you have to make a Berkat Hamazon. As you can see, the next part is sweet bread, challah, and bread rolls, and this will go through your samsa, gushkajeh, and all that according to the Yalkut Yosef, maybe according to the Halacha Brura as well. Bez Hashem, the next time we'll continue in Tzurba Rabbanan would be after Pesach. Next week we will be dealing in a summary of Hilchot Pesach. The next 2 weeks we'll deal with summary of Hilchot Pesach. Next week will be Hagalat and Libun Kalim. Okay, so Tashrim Kalim next week. All right. Thank you.
Speak after the majority.